I also was fortunate to have a conversation with Pete Buttigieg, who currently is the Secretary of the Department of Transportation. But when I spoke with him, he was acting in his personal capacity and giving reasons and also trying to bring it home and make the case as to why he thinks that Kamala Harris would be a much better choice than Donald Trump. And now we're going to hear from Mayor and Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Good morning.
The Honorable Pete Buttigieg. How are you, sir?
Very good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. You know, we're on pins and needles here as we're just a few days away from the actual election. What I'd like to ask you, though, if you were advising the campaign, what would you say is the best closing argument heading into Election Day on November 5th?
Well, I think it's a three-legged stool. One is the economy, reminding Americans that we don't need more tax cuts for the rich, which is the only economic promise that Donald Trump ever keeps. What we need is to make things more affordable, and she's made clear how we're going to build more housing, get people a child tax credit, make sure that there's paid family leave, double down on that $35 insulin cap, other things that are really going to help make it affordable to live in America. That's leg number one. Number two is about personal freedoms. The only other promise that Donald Trump kept was when he promised to eliminate women's right to choose, which, of course, he did exactly that. We need to make sure that we restore those rights, and she's speaking to every American woman when she says that she's going to make sure that they have that right and that control over their future. And the third thing that's maybe a little less obvious, but I think very important, is I think a lot of Americans would love to just get politics out of our face a little bit. And ever since Donald Trump came on the political scene 10 years ago, we've been in this stage of just feeling like everybody's at each other's throats, like you can't escape it, like people are being divided against each other constantly. I think that a vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for us to have a more decent political future. She's made clear that she wants Republicans to be at the table, even if she doesn't always agree with them. He's made clear that he thinks Democrats and anybody else who disagrees with him is the enemy. And we can do so much better than that. So, I think if we want a more normal Republican Party in the future, a good way to start to make that happen is for her to be president and to try to move on from this chapter of having him set the agenda, whether he's in power or not.
Mr. Buttigieg, this has been such a whirlwind campaign, and especially us here in Wisconsin, we've seen so many candidate visits that they probably could register to vote in Wisconsin. As residents, they've been here so much. But I think a lot of what has been lost in the shuffle is real policy achievements by this administration. And people may forget that Kamala Harris is currently the vice president of the United States. And so some of these policy achievements have taken place on her watch. Can you speak to something like, let's say, infrastructure and the dedication and commitments to making infrastructure projects come to fruition during this administration?
Absolutely. I mean, whether we're talking about internet getting out to more families or lead pipes and water lines being replaced or the energy work that's happening, and most importantly, the jobs that are being created through that. That wasn't happening before. Donald Trump said he was going to do infrastructure, but he failed to put a bill together. That happened with the Biden-Harris administration. She's a big part of that. Same thing with the overall job growth that we have right now, the pace that factories are being built at. We're seeing more and more people get good-paying union jobs, including a lot of women and black and brown workers who really weren't as much part of these good-paying construction union jobs in the past, getting more and more chances to be part of that. This is not something that just happened on its own. It definitely wasn't happening under him. As a matter of fact, even though he's trying to rewrite economic history, we had a manufacturing recession under Donald Trump. I mean, you can go back and look it up. That was even before COVID. Couldn't be more different from what she has helped to deliver. $35 cap on insulin for seniors. And we would have had a $35 cap on insulin for everybody except the Republicans blocked us. A good way to change that would be to make sure that Tammy Baldwin goes back to the Senate and has more Democratic colleagues with her, and that Kamala Harris is there in the White House. So I absolutely agree. There have been extraordinary policy achievements. It's hard to cut through the noise and talk about them sometimes because the other side wants us talking about anything else. That's why they're reaching for the most divisive cultural wedge issues they can find, putting it all over TV like it was the biggest thing in the world, when the reality is people just want to know how this election is going to affect them personally.
character matters, and even the most diehard Trump supporters will say, well, we don't like some of the things that he says and how he says them. Yet for some reason, they pretend that character does not matter. Can we speak just for a moment? At the end of the day, you take the policy out of it, you take the politics out of it. Who would we rather have representing us on the world stage than Kamala Harris? So just your thoughts on how character is really something that's on the ballot, even though it may supersede policy and politics.
Well, you never know exactly what's going to face the next president of the United States. The hardest decisions and the biggest problems in the world come onto that desk. And you need somebody, whether you agree with them on every issue or not, you need somebody in that seat who's going to have the right values, who's going to put the American people first, who tells the truth, and who can be trusted. And that's not him. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why some of the people who know him best, including his longest-serving chief of staff, are saying, this guy's dangerous. I've never in my life seen this many Republicans supporting a Democrat, and I've never in my life heard of a president whose own chief of staff or even own vice president aren't supporting him for re-election. That tells you everything you need to know. I wish everybody knew Kamala Harris the way I do. I've had the privilege of working with her. As a matter of fact, we became friends when we were competing against each other, which I think says a lot about who she is, and somebody who really sees the best in people and is going to bring the best out of people, which, again, above and beyond any individual issue, is maybe the most important thing we need from our leaders, especially in times like these.
Do you think that bipartisanship can genuinely come back under a Harris-Walz administration? Because the vice president has made it very, very clear that she will offer her political opponents a seat at the table. She would like to be challenged by them and utilize their good ideas when possible. So is this just a pipe dream? Have we gone so far, in the direction of partisanship that bipartisan legislation and working together is out of reach?
I think we can do it. Look, we saw it happen on the infrastructure bill. She was a big part of that. We saw it happen on the CHIPS and Science Act. This is the bill that's leading to a lot of construction around semiconductors and other factories being developed around Wisconsin and around the Midwest, really all over the country. That's something that was done on a bipartisan basis. So there's no reason to give up on bipartisanship, but you got to have a president who believes in it, and we will have that when she's in the Oval Office.
Speaking with the Honorable Pete Buttigieg, they always talk about these October surprises, and I swear if you're paying attention to this campaign, every single day there's been an October surprise. But no one had this particular thing on their bingo card. The VP is leading in Iowa by 3 points, and Iowa's a state that really neither campaign spent much time or effort in because it was just a traditionally red state. Donald Trump won it on both occasions, 2016 and 2020. Do we think that there could be more surprises that may supersede what we've been seeing in the polls, like another Iowa somewhere?
I'll tell you that poll coming out, that was a thunderbolt. And, I spent a lot of time in Iowa, of course, when I was running for president. And this is not any ordinary poll. The pollster who does this is one of the most respected people in the country. Now, it's just a poll. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily right, but it certainly seems to reflect a lot of people late in the game breaking in the direction of the vice president. And if it can happen in Iowa, it can happen anywhere. But mark my words, this is a close race, and it could come down to just a couple of votes per precinct in a state like Wisconsin. So, we've got to make sure that everybody who cares about this election, everybody who's concerned about how their families will do if he's in charge versus if she's in charge, needs to go to the polls. And if you've already been to the polls, talk to a friend of yours, somebody who you're not so sure if they voted. Make sure that they exercise their right and privilege to vote.
In the state of Wisconsin, 1 million people have already early voted. That is breaking and exceeding all previous records. But what would you say to folks who have not voted yet? Maybe they're still on the fence at this very last minute here in the 11th hour. What is your final push to them to get them to cast their vote for Kamala Harris for president?
Well, the message is that you might not agree 100% of the time with her or with any candidate. Nobody does, but there is a very clear difference right now. You have somebody like her who's going to be looking out for you, somebody like him who's in it for himself. She put it best. He would arrive with an enemies list. She's going to arrive with a to-do list. And as I said before, even if you don't follow politics every day, if you want politics to be a little bit less in your face, a good way to do that is to put the chaos and division of Trump in the past and move forward with Kamala Harris.
the Honorable Pete Buttigieg, appearing in his personal capacity. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm looking forward to a big victory on election night.
We'll be working on it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You are listening to The Truth with Sherwin Hughes on 101.